Hello, vinyl community. Dark Dove back with you again on a wet and windy Friday. So coming into the weekend, and that means we'll probably soon be expecting maybe a new entry in Freddie Big Star's Gimme 10 1970s series. But in the meantime, I'm going to do a general update. Gonna show you some recent pickups from perhaps roughly around about the last month or so. So the first few pickups all come from my local independent record store, which is very handily just about 2 minutes walk from me, although it is also a huge source of temptation. Starting off with a recent reissue of a late 70s post-punk experimental classic, and that is the self-titled debut album from This Heat, including Charles Hayward, experimental group formed in London in around about 76, who kind of bridged the gap between progressive rock, krautrock, and post-punk, which incidentally kind of post-punk really kind of, you know, they were formed before post-punk really, but one of these groups who, you know, were kind of very much ahead of their time. So this is the debut album. This was recorded between 76 and 78, but released in 1979. And yeah, so there's dub reggae influence. There's kind of prefiguring elements of industrial music as well, and also taking this progressive, perhaps krautrock kind of thing. But the tracks, 24 track loop and test card are two absolutely stunning tracks. I just have to listen to them. Just this whole album really is just so ahead of its time, and this is a great reissue because the original albums are just astronomically expensive. Comes with this nice insert as well, and but I have now this and their second mini album. So Deceit is the only one now that I'm missing. So I'll try and track that down in time. But for now, I'm very pleased to pick this up. Now on the same day that now they've got a lot of second-hand stuff in, and on the same day as I got that, I also made my next pickup. Now this was the result of a partial trade. I traded in some CDs, which covered most of the price of this. But this is something which I've been looking for a long time. Oh, sorry, I should have warned you. Okay. Einsturzende Neubauten, and this is Haus der Luge, which I think roughly translates from German as the House of Hate, or maybe something kind of similar. Yeah, so this is from 1989. Einsturzende Neubauten, whose name translates as the sound of collapsing buildings, formed in Berlin around about 1980, part of the German post-punk industrial scene. This is a slightly I don't have very much by them, but this came out in 1989, and this was apparently a bit of perhaps a slight move away from maybe the more extreme earlier work, but still it's pretty heavy stuff nonetheless. Yeah, yeah, I can't not mention that artwork. I think an etching from I don't know if it was by Dürer, but maybe one of his contemporaries from around the 16th century, and there's some other similar. But I think that well, obviously the eyeballs, and I think the emissions coming from the horse's old Todger there might have been added on. I think for this album artwork. But yeah, so this is a um, pretty intense lyrics sung in German, um, but it's also kind of, I don't know, how could you describe it? Uh, Kind of in some ways like a heavier, more extreme Depeche Mode, perhaps in some ways. Um, oh, by the way, it came out on the some bizarre label, and this is an original German pressing. So and I'll show you the label as well there. With that horse's head. Now, of course, Blixa Bargeld of Einsturzende Neubauten was a member of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds as well. And the next thing I'm going to show, there is a connection there. So just bear with me 2 seconds. And also also part of their second-hand stock, of which they've brought in a lot of interesting stuff lately. And this is Mossside Story by Barry Adamson. Now, Barry Adamson from Manchester, a member of Magazine, one of those seminal Manchester post-punk groups, bass player with them. He also went on to be in the early lineup of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Now, this is a solo album he brought out in 1989, and I'm sure Freddie has shown this one, Freddie Big Star. But this is basically it came out in 1989 on Mute. Now, the best way of describing this is as a kind of imaginary film soundtrack. There's kind of there's kind of elements like it's like a film soundtrack meets kind of library music. It's kind of with elements as well of industrial music, perhaps. It's kind of elements that sound almost like, say, the lost soundtrack to some 1960s spy series, but it's basically like a kind of film noir setting transposed to Mossside is an area in Manchester, a kind of a notorious inner city area with a lot of social problems and crime, and it's kind of Barry Adamson's kind of take on, say, for instance, if you set a kind of a film noir, a kind of an imaginary film noir in this setting of Mossside, in this tough area of Manchester. So yeah, very interesting. There's contributions as well from Mick Harvey and some of the other members of the Bad Seeds. Also some vocals from Diamanda Gallas. So it's one I've been looking for a while. So I picked up that. It's again an original pressing. Sorry. Also in the same place, I actually picked up this up just yesterday, and this is another secondhand from their secondhand section. This is two Lone Swordsmen, Andrew Weatherall project. So this is on the Warp label, and so basically this is as typical with the Warp label. This is electronica, kind of in the style of Square Pusher, also Cray, perhaps. So these are this is a double album, and it's reissues of their previous sorry, the name of it. Sorry, the title of this album is the Lone. Well, sorry. Yeah, for further reminders, it's called further reminders, and it's remixes of tracks from their previous album, which is called Tiny Reminders, and this came out in 2001, and it is actually it's actually a promo copy as well. Don't know if you can actually make it out there, but yeah, it is stamped as a promo. But yeah, I have some stuff by them already, and I mean, you can't go wrong with Warp. I grab almost anything on the Warp label, with the possible exception of oh fuck, I can't think of their name. Doesn't matter. Anyway, now moving on, another in another record store, another different record store, secondhand record store, I made the following pickup, which is another long time want list item, and that is Miles Davis, Jack Johnson. So this album came out in 1971, and it is a further continuation of Miles Davis's flirtation with fusion, which he started, well, kind of began with In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew. So yeah, so this was the soundtrack to a documentary about Jack Johnson, who was the first I think it was he the first African American, was he heavyweight boxing champion? I think. Yes, he was. Yes, in the 1900s, and of course, I think I think Ben, you've shown this one before and went into the story of Jack Johnson. But anyway, he as you can imagine, he faced severe racism, and his career was basically hobbled. He was forced to take a dive, and but he very much kind of upset the white establishment with kind of race. Yeah, he wasn't popular with the for upsetting the racial balance all the time in the United States. So and he was quite a flamboyant character as well. Liked women and fast cars, and but anyway, the album itself. It's an original UK copy on CBS. Now it would have originally come with a poster, but that is missing. But it's an absolutely perfect copy. I mean, it's in perfect condition, and this is a great album. I think it really kind of this is out of all Miles Davis's collaborations with John McLaughlin, I think this is the one that shows off John McLaughlin's guitar skills to great effect, because John McLaughlin really cuts loose with the guitar on this one. And I got it for an okay price as well. I got it for €15, which I think is not bad for an original copy in very, very decent condition. Okay, so moving on. Now, next up is a Discogs purchase. This is something I had on my want list for a while. Now, this is a film soundtrack, It's a film which I remember reading about many years ago in some horror fanzine and being very intrigued by it. Um, okay, okay, this is the soundtrack to a movie called Possession. This was released in 1981. It was by a Polish director called sorry, Andrzej Zu, Zul, Zulawski. Zulawski, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, it was a movie which was made came out in 1981. It was set in West Berlin and starred Sam Neill and Isabella Gianni. Now it's a very very strange film. Technically, it's a horror movie, but it's not really it's not your kind of average. Yeah, it's basically kind of it's kind of strongly elements of psychological horror. It's kind of a trying to go into the storyline now. I'd be here all day, but it's basically about a couple who living in West Berlin. There's all kind of elements of the cold overdrop of the Cold War. There's all these shots of the Berlin Wall, and there's this whole kind of foreboding atmosphere in the film. But basically, this movie was banned. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the in Britain and kind of to an element here in Ireland as well. There was in the mid 80s there was a scandal known as the video nasties furore, which is a kind of a moral panic. And there was a list compiled of all these banned horror movies, and this one ended up on that list largely because of one scene where, well, it basically involves Isabella Gianni's character having sex with a kind of octopus monster. Anyway, it's a strange movie. But anyway, enough about that. This is the soundtrack by a Polish composer, Andrzej Korzeniński, and this was unreleased up to a few years ago. This particular this came out in 2012 on Finders Keepers Records. So Finders Keepers. Yeah, so it's basically very creepy score. There's kind of elements, electronic elements, kind of modern classical. Um, yeah, so and it's yeah, the Finders Keepers have been reissuing a lot of Korzinski's scores recently. He did a lot of Polish movies, apparently in the 70s and 80s, and kind of being rediscovered really. But this came out in 2012, and it was the first official release of this soundtrack. So if you like kind of weird, kind of yeah, okay. So I am a fan of kind of kind of out there film soundtracks. So let's just check it out if that sort of thing appeals to you. Okay, so moving on. A couple of thrift shop finds. Well, actually, these two weren't thrift shop. I got these in a flea market. So the two of them were a tenner, but this is one I've been looking for a long time. Another film soundtrack, Midnight Express, Giorgio Moroder's soundtrack. Movie is good enough movie, even though it's it plays hard with the facts basically, but a fantastic soundtrack from Giorgio Moroder. Kind of electronic synthesizer soundtrack. So I had been looking for this for a long time, so very pleased to pick that up. The other pickup is Leo Kottke, who I wasn't really familiar with. I was kind of vaguely familiar with his name in relation to John Fahey. I knew he recorded with John Fahey, did an album or two with him. So It was kind of a blind buy, but this is a really good album. Um, Entirely instrument. Okay, it came out in 1977. This is self-titled, even though it's not his first album. He did have several other albums before this, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. Some really good guitar playing, instrumental guitar on this, but and it's also Jack Neat's added some orchestration to it as well. This copy is a little bit scratched, so there's a bit of crackle, but anyway. Now some charity shop finds. These three pickups I made in a charity shop a few weeks back. Now each one of them was €1.50. Françoise Hardy sings about love. Love, really big fan of Françoise Hardy. Now this is, I think, from '68 on Marble Arch. It's not a great copy. This copy is pretty scratched, but it's just about playable, really. It plays, but it's quite noisy. But I couldn't resist it all the same for 150. And whoever had it previously was a budding artist by the look of things. Also picked up this at the same time. The Kinks 20 Golden Greats. A 70s budget label, but it's got all their best, all their big hits on here, so can't go wrong with that. Now the third find was really kind of is the most interesting of the three. Mike Heron, the Glenroe tapes. Now Mike Heron, formerly of the Incredible String Band. Now it turns out that this is a pretty rare private press, which was released in 1987, and it consists of previously up to this point, of demos which he made in the late 70s. And sorry. So it was actually put out as a private pressing by Mike Heron himself, and yeah, this is really rare actually. This album goes for around €50 on Discogs. So I picked it up for €1.50, which is quite a steal. Yeah, it has a bit of an 80s sound to it, so I think possibly when it was released in '87 it was probably remastered and kind of maybe the production, but yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. There's some good, yeah, I'd probably have to have a few more listens to it to really make up my mind on it, but it's quite different to Incredible String Band. But yeah, but it is a pretty damn rare album. Like, to find it in a charity shop for €1.50 was was pretty good. I am going to finish off with a few CDs. Okay, another Discogs purchase is this. This is Steve Reich Phases. Now this is a 5 CD box set which was released on Nonesuch in 2006. Now this, I spotted this I got this pretty cheap because there's a bit of damage to the spine, and the seller was based here in Ireland, so the postage was very cheap. But basically, this has music for 18 musicians, which I already have on vinyl, but it's very nice to have it on CD as well, because it's kind of a piece that you like to listen to uninterrupted without changing over the vinyl. But it also has desert music, drumming, come out, different trains, music from Mallet. music for mallet instruments, voices and organ. So a lot of these pieces I don't have. So it's fantastic to have them all collected on this one box set. So and it was pretty cheap, including postage. It was €15. So that was a bargain. Um, just very briefly, some CDs which I've picked up in charity shops. Um, Black Sabbath, Paranoid. Again, I already have this on vinyl, but nice to have it on CD too. This is a 1980s issue CD on Castle Entertainment, and it's kind of collectible enough in its own right, really. This particular edition. Apocalypse Now Redux. This is the complete Apocalypse Now soundtrack by Coppola himself and his father, Carmine Coppola. So this cuts out all the dialogue from the movie, so you just get the soundtrack itself, including the doors, the end, and the soundtrack, which is fantastic. It's a fantastic kind of synthesizer, early 70s synthesizer, very creepy soundtrack. Fantastic movie and great soundtrack. By the way, it's missing the slipcase. There would have been a slipcase with this originally, but still. Okay, Captain Beefheart. I got this for 50¢. Ice Cream for Crow. This is Captain Beefheart's very last album, which was released in 1982. So this is a CD reissue from fairly recently, I think. Yeah, so yeah, great to pick this up. Add to the Beefheart collection. I just love the title track, and there's a great video that comes with it as well. That was, I think, yeah, this was released in 1982, so it's very last album from Beefheart, and he just completely retired from music then afterwards, unfortunately. Again, this was 50¢ as well. This is by Talvin Singh. Talvin Singh, Anglo-Indian musician from band Corner Shop, together with Niladri Kumar on sitar. So this is kind of this is like kind of ambient electronica meets Indian traditional music. It's called Together. It came out a few years ago, about 2011. It wasn't released on vinyl, so it's only available on CD, so it's quite a nice find. Okay, so nearly at half an hour. I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah, so hope everybody enjoyed it, and hope you have a great weekend, and looking forward to continuing Freddie's Gimme 10 series. So, all the best.